Welcome to Little Life, Big Loss. We've already had a few little technical difficulties, but we're praying that our girls help us from heaven. We're like, come on, Wren and Millie, make this work. So this morning I have the beautiful Maddy joining us. She is all the way over in Perth or WA?
Victoria.
Oh, you're Victoria. Why do I always say Perth?
There must be a warnable somewhere around there because someone else has said that to me as well.
Really, I always think you guys are Perth. Okay, she's in Victoria. Here I am, like, do you guys have daylight savings over there? Duh. Far out. So we're going to be hearing Maddie's story today. I've been chatting to her and her husband for maybe a couple of months now. Like I always say, I don't really know the depths of everyone's story, and I do know that I do know a fair bit of your story, but I know it's going to re-jog my memory by hearing it. And I guess one of the reasons I started the podcast was because I had so many people reaching out and chatting and sharing their story, and I hated that I didn't know all of it. And then when I'd have another conversation, I'm like trying to remember what their story was. And so I just love to hear it right from the beginning and go through all the ins and outs. So what I really love to start with is my first question of who was Maddy before she experienced baby loss?
Oh, Jesus. Just normal. Normal sounds weird, but just a mum of one, a nurse, a midwife, paediatric and special care nurse, and just a wife. And not just an everyday,
Yep. Just living life, thinking
just
everything's
cruising along.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I love that you're a Hold on, I'm just going to get my husband to close the door. Dilsey, can you please close this door? I will close it myself. Hold on. Thank you. Sorry about that. Had the aircon flowing through.
Oh, God.
So I love that you're a midwife. I think this is going to be a super, super interesting episode based on the fact that you have so much knowledge as well, which I think can be a pro and a con when it comes to something like this. So you already had one child before Wren came along. How old was she when you fell pregnant with Wren?
So Edie was stopped breastfeeding at 22 months, so around that stage.
Yeah.
22, 20, somewhere around 20 months old, I think,
And how was your pregnancy with her and birth?
Horrendous pregnancy. I had gestational diabetes, was on insulin, lots of little bleeds. My anxiety went through the roof. It was a very intense one. We were induced at 37 weeks.
Wow.
Had a vaginal birth. Had an epidural, but quite a nice birth. I had all my girlfriends around me because I obviously birthed at the hospital that I worked at, and was really well supported, and went home really quickly, and it was lovely.
Yeah, wow.
Cruisy for the birth postnatally sort of time of it.
And how come they induced you at 37 weeks?
I had recurrent reduced fetal movements, and because I was had IDGDM, my ultrasounds were going a bit dodgy, and they were worried about my placenta, and my insulin requirement went away, so they just thought safer to get her out. Induced balloon and got induced.
Was that... Do you think that they did that based on the fact that you had knowledge and you were able to advocate for yourself as well? Do you think it would have been the same?
I think with given the circumstances, anyone would have been induced.
Okay.
But I pretty stressed. So, something just didn't feel right.
Okay. And so then Addie, did you say?
Edie.
Edie was 22 months, and then you fell pregnant again.
Yep. Which was a surprise. We had ovulation induction for Edie. I've got polycystic ovaries, so had fertility treatment for her. And then Wren hadn't had a period and just conceived her naturally. And it was a lovely pregnancy.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about pregnancy with Wren, and let's go down the timeline of what happened there.
So it was. Do we have? I don't think I even had much bleeding with Wren, maybe a little bit, but just a really nice pregnancy, just morning sickness, which I had with Edie.
Mm-hmm.
And it all just kind of cruised along, really. We didn't have any concerns, didn't have gestational diabetes this time.
Wow.
A bit of reduced movements, but nothing, and just irritable uterus, so just lots of tightenings and things like that, but nothing that warranted anything. Just finished work a little bit early, so I wasn't stressing out my body, but yeah,
Yep.
it was lovely.
Natural pregnancy, PCOS. Yeah. What a beautiful surprise! Like, isn't that just so? Oh,
It was lovely.
it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, I was about to
Yeah.
say, did it feel like a beautiful surprise? Because I mean, a
Yeah.
surprise is still a surprise.
No, it was she was very wanted. And we just started building our forever home, and it was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, how far along during the pregnancy did you get until? Did you guys know there was going to be anything wrong post
No,
birth?
so no, nothing at all. I was induced at 38 weeks. I just had some really severe abdo pain. I just felt a bit just off. I was a bit like, oh, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So messaged one of my girls who was one of my friends who was my midwife, and just said, this is what's going on. And she's like, oh, if it's still hurting, come on up. And I went on up, and kind of all just unfolded from there, which was, not what was anticipated, but yeah.
Yeah. And so you were induced and you had a vaginal birth?
No, so I was induced. I went up there and her heart rate, they popped me on the monitors for the pain and stuff. Her heart rate dropped to 80 and kind of just stayed there for a little bit and then came back up. And it was Good Friday. My obstetrician, and she was my fertility, my private obstetrician with Edie when I conceived Edie, and she's a good friend, came in and said, basically, we can watch you all night while you're having these little drops in her heart rate when you have tightenings, or we can get you going and watch you all night while you're in labour. And second pregnancy, it would be a second vaginal birth, like no brainer, let's just get things going. So we started that, had a balloon in, and she kept dropping her heart rate with balloons, and like, all right, we'll just break your waters and get you going. And I'm like, yep, cool. And progressed quite quickly. I think I was 1 centimetre, and then I was 4 very quickly. And then she started, we didn't know what we're having at the time, but started having bigger dips in her heart rate in longer periods of time. And they were just turning the synth off, turning it on, and watching, and not really quite sure. And they'd already called the obstetrician to come in, because it's a public hospital in Warrnambool. There was a doctor there, but a more junior one, not the consultant. So they were getting her to come in, and then her heart rate dropped again, and they did an internal, and I had a full cord prolapse. So everything kind of went from there quite rapidly. I just remember them giving me lots of terbutaline, which helps to relax the uterus and stop the contractions and things like that. And the cord just came fully out. So then obviously the doctors popped their hand up to put pressure off the head and keep it off the cord. They took us around to theatre, and being Warrnambool, we don't have a 24-hour theatre. Okay. So for anything to happen like that, you have to, it's a code, and everyone gets called in from their homes.
Shit.
So it was like an out-of-body experience. I remember being wheeled down the corridor, and I like saying, save my baby. And I'm like, I just remember saying it going, this is like a movie, this is disgusting. And we got to theatre, and it was pitch black. There was no one there. So we had to just sit in theatre waiting, and I could hear her heartbeat sitting around like the 60 beats per minute. And I'm like, and then all the theatre nurses got there, and we went into theatre. My obstetrician got there. She tried to, she put some more pressure on her head to try and get the pressure off the cord. That's one of the only things I remember, because I'm like, it felt like it was burning. Like she had a hot towel as well to wrap around the cord. I'm like, this is excruciating, because obviously no pain relief or anything. And we're just waiting for the anaesthetist, and he didn't come. So we had time where they tried, because they were waiting around, they tried to do a ventouse delivery, like
Which
the vacuum
is
the vacuum on the baby's head to pull her out. But they'd pushed her up so high, trying to get the head off the cord, they couldn't get her down. And then they tried forceps, but still she was too high and they couldn't get her down. So I had all of that without pain relief. I mentally don't remember it. I know it happened. Matt was obviously had been taken out of the room because it's theatre, he had to wait, so he could hear me screaming, but I don't remember it. My girlfriend, I bit her hand apparently. Don't remember that either, so apologies to my girlfriend Grace. And then the anaesthetist arrived. He didn't know that it was an emergency, I don't think either. Matt just remembered him waltzing kind of in. So that's my biggest trauma, is remembering him, because the nurses were trying to put the mask on me to gas me down, and he slapped it away and said, "I'm not ready for that yet. She needs a new cannula." And I remember yelling at him, "Just get the baby out."
Why did he not know it was an emergency? Like, had he just not got the memo?
I think there's miscommunication. I'm not really 100% sure. It just turned to shit. So I think that happened at like 23 past 11, cord prolapse, and Wren was born just before midnight. So she'd had over 40 minutes without proper heart rate. So I had a GA. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Obviously. It was just a shit show. We had a locum consultant paediatrician who was on that weekend. She didn't know where theatre was. So she rocked up to the ward, and then they took one of the midwives, which all my girlfriends were on that shift, took her up, and then she's like, call the paediatrician. They then called the junior paediatrician who couldn't do anything, and then they called the consultant, who happens to be one of my good friends. I used to work in the special care with him, so I've known him for 7 years. But she did a beautiful job, the locum consultant. They resussed Wren, and got her back and took her down to the nursery, and then I woke up in theatre and I got told I had a little girl, and that she was alive, and I thought she'd be okay, and Matt thought she'd be okay. Apparently he came up and visited me. I don't remember. After a GA, I had searing pain because I didn't have I woke up and had no pain relief, so they had to put a PCA on me, and so a little button I could press to give myself medication, and then took me down to the ward to see Wren, and we thought, oh yeah, cool, she'll be all right.
That was wild, but she's there and she's got a heartbeat, and she's
okay.
going to be all okay.
Everyone's kind of, cool. And then as we're going into the nursery, Greg, the consultant paediatrician, who's my friend, that's the thing I remember most about it. He said to me, he's like, "So do you want to palliate here or in Melbourne?" I'm like, "Sorry, what?" What? He's like, "Yeah, it's like, it's not going to be a good outcome." I lost it. Matt, while I'd been away, they thought they'd called in my mum and Matt's mum. So they were on the ward. It was the middle of COVID. They were waiting. Matt's like, "No one's to meet Wren until Maddy has." And they took me in there. And she'd already started having some seizures. They were cooling her. She was intubated. Just this tiny little tot. She was 2.9 kilos. Perfect baby. But so had a good chat with Greg, and his biggest fear was that if Melbourne Royal Children's came and collected her, that they'd take her up there and withdraw care, and I wouldn't be with her.
What do you mean withdraw care? Like,
so cease treatment and extubate her, take the tubes out, and she'd pass away. So he didn't want that to happen to me. He'd rather it happen here. His thing was, "I don't want anyone to do my dirty work. This is my job, and you're my family." So he rang them, and they had big chats, and they're like, "We'll give her a crack. Like, we can try actively cooling her." So they actively cooled for 72 hours. I don't know if you know much about that. And they pop them, Millie. Yeah.
You can explain it though, because we had the same thing with Millie.
Yeah. So actively cooling, they're on like a little cooled blanket, and they lower their body temperature, and that helps to preserve the brain. They do that for 72 hours, and then they rewarm. So they're like, nope, we'll give her a crack. And we're like, well, if they're going to give her a crack, we've got to give her a chance. Let's just see what she can do. Not giving up on her. So they came and collected her at 7 in the morning. They flew down and grabbed her, and we said our goodbyes. And then Matt had a bit of a sleep, and then his dad drove him up, and he went straight to the Royal Children's.
Yeah.
And then I got an ambulance down to the Royal Women's with my mum and stayed there because obviously I just had a Caesar. And that's kind of where our sort of journey started, with Wren. Keep going if you want.
Yeah, no, keep going, keep going.
So, we got up to Melbourne. Matt had been with Wren, and he was sending me photos, and they took down some of my breast milk that I'd expressed beforehand, and she was licking the milk, and they're like, oh, yep, cool. And then I rang, I think it might have been like 11 o'clock at night, and spoke to one of the nurses there, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're just giving her some FFP, so fresh frozen plasma, and a blood transfusion, and I just went, fuck, she's dying. Sorry for my language. I'm like, no. All right. And I'm like, I need to get to her. I hadn't seen her. So the nurses came in and took out some cannulas and stuff like that. I rang Matt. He came in, got me.
And so we went to two different hospitals?
Yeah, so Matt was staying at his auntie's in Melbourne. Wren was at the Royal Children's because she's in intensive care, so in Butterfly, so no one can stay there. And I was at the Royal Women's just down the road. So, he collected me. We went there, went up and saw her, and I got to see her, and the nurse was like, oh, no, it's okay. She's okay. But I just needed to see her. So we stayed with her for a few hours, and then went back. And we kind of did that for the next day as well. And then I think I was discharged on day 2 or 3, but they kept cooling her. And then she had a few seizures. It's just an hysterical mess. But she had brains monitoring on, and it was, so they've got little ECG. You might have had that. Did you have that with Millie as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, to check her brain waves and see what she's sort of doing, and it picks up seizures as well. Her brain waves weren't normal, but they weren't absent either. Every time we talked to her or touch her, she'd have activity. So like, she knows we're here, she knows what she's loved.
It's beautiful.
And then they started warming her, and I think I just didn't twig. I didn't have my midwife and nursery and baby brain on. I'm like, they couldn't rewarm her. Usually it takes like 12 hours to 24 hours to rewarm. It took, I think, an extra 12 or so hours on top of that. They just couldn't get her to warm up, which usually shows you there's something not quite right with the brainstem. So once she was warm, they went and did an MRI on her.
So is this is going to be so helpful for me, because I'm like just picking apart everything you're saying, and I'm like, I wonder how long it took them to reheat Millie once they had cooled her, because so we're having a meeting with the hospital in early January to go over everything now that we have the results and stuff. And I'm like, so I wouldn't have known all those things. And you're saying you didn't have your midwife and nursery brain on. And you have that knowledge there. And it's like all the things that the nurses maybe would have known what was going on well before we did. But things like that, I wouldn't have known what's right or wrong.
And I kept asking the nurses, I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? And if it was me in that position as well, you never want to take away someone's hope. That's all you've got. So they would have, everyone knew it was a bad outcome. My paediatrician back home, he was calling me every day, checking in, asking how I was, and I was updating him. He's like, Maddie, you've got to be realistic, and like you've like, and I'd be like, no, she's doing this, Greg. And he's like, yeah, but Maddie, think about it. And I'm like, just didn't have a bar of it. I'm like, no, she's fine. She could have been
like
fine.
we were like when I look at photos now, I'm like, man, we were naive. Like you were just so hopeful, but fuck, like I think it was on day 3 after she'd come off the cooling mat and they'd started to heat her up again. And I just remember now that they had a lamp on her because they were like,
Yeah.
oh, we're just trying to warm her up. But now I'm thinking maybe they weren't able to. But there's a photo of us
Yeah.
holding her and she was still in the like the nest. So it wasn't skin to skin, it was just a hold. And when I look at photos of that, like she was so unwell. But like Dylan and Maya's smile is just like ecstatic. Like we're holding
Yeah.
her. This means she's getting better. Like it gave us so much hope when in actual fact they were just giving us these beautiful moments.
Yeah.
And I think
they knew what they were doing.
They knew. Yeah.
Because the blankets actually reheat, the ones they sit on, and that's usually all they need. And they put the overhead heater on Wren as well to try and heat her up, and they just kept turning it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. That makes sense now. And
Yeah.
look, I'm super grateful that they never blindsided us at all in the hospital. They were always, they used to call her Mr. Millie. Like, we're really unsure what's going on with Millie. And they were, they never made us feel like, but when I look back, I'm like, damn, she was
You can see
sick.
it when you look back, and they're never going to go, like, same at the Royal Children's. They were very honest, but they never took away our hope either, which you kind of need. That's the only thing keeping you going. They were absolutely beautiful at the Royal Children's, and that's where I used to work working down in Warrnambool as well.
How far away is Warrnambool from Melbourne?
3.5 hours.
Shit.
So,
okay.
I used to, my grad year was at the Royal Children's when I became a nurse.
Wow.
And then I was a paediatric intensive care nurse, not on butterfly, so with the neonates, but on paediatrics. And so all of the stuff I'd done, I'd been on the other side, but your mum brain just switches on and you just don't see it, or you don't want to see it. And so...
How has that changed? How has that changed have you gone back to midwifery and I'm jumping the story a little bit, but I'm curious of how you go back into that space and if it's changed for you.
So I took my mat leave with Wren, took my year, a little bit less than, and I went back, but writing protocols and procedures up on the midwifery floor. I just wasn't ready to be on the floor, but I was pregnant when I went back with Noah. So I could be in the tea room, see the girls, kind of desensitize myself a little bit to the situation. And I'm on mat leave again now, obviously. So I don't think I'll be going back to the floor anytime soon.
Yeah.
I probably could push myself and do it, but I think it'd be a disservice to the women that I'm looking after because I want to be able to give them my full self and support them. And it's not fair if I go to work and can't give them everything that they need to get through that time in their lives and their journey as well. So
and grief hits us sometimes so unexpectedly, and even though obviously in that field it's very expected that you'd have grief bombs, but who knows what might trigger you, and it might be something that you're least expecting in a different moment, and that could be quite an ordeal.
Yeah, and you don't want to ever have to put that onto someone and make them, it's not about you in that situation, and you need to be professional and present for them. And I couldn't do it. So I might be able to one day, and that's really cool if I can, but we'll just see how we go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so Wren had been on the cooling mat for 72 hours. They started to reheat her. She wasn't heating up as well. It took longer. So what happened from there?
So once we heated her up, we got our first cuddle. And then she had her MRI. So they wanted to see what was actually going on. So she went down for her MRI. And then we got more cuddles, and we got the results the next day. So the doctors came around in the morning, and they're like, it's actually not as bad as what we thought it was going to be. They're like, she might have a bit of behavioural and a little bit of mobility issues, but it's actually not too bad. And we're like, right, cool. So we're probably going to get to take our baby home. They're like talking about starting feeds and things like that. And we're like, awesome. So I remember going downstairs and we were sitting having a coffee and so excited, and just this, like, we had hope, and it was, we got to envision taking Wren home, and it was just beautiful. And then we went back upstairs, and my family had arrived, and Matt's family had arrived at that point. So my mum and dad and Matt's mum and dad and our daughter Edie. We had seen her at that point, and we were having a bit of play with her and downstairs, and then they went outside to go and just have a play with Edie and do all that, and we went back up. I went back upstairs, and then I called Matt to come back up because the doctors were coming around, and they walked in. They kind of sat down. They were like, we're going to have a meeting at some point to discuss it properly, and usually they're going to take us to another room and we're going to have a chat. And they sat down, and she said catastrophic, and I just lost it. Like, straight away, I'm like, we're fucked. I thought I was going to vomit. I was hysterical. She's like, I'm so sorry. She's usually like an MRI. If you've had some brain damage, it's pretty, you can see it. It's usually in one spot, and it's pretty white and bright and obvious, because she'd had this low heart rate for such a long time. She just had subtle changes basically everywhere, all the way down to her brainstem. And they had to send it off and get it looked at by some head guy, I think at the women's possibly. And they're like, we don't think she'll be able to breathe on her own if we extubate her. She hasn't got a gag reflex anymore. She kind of had those things in the early days when they started cooling, but I think she kept deteriorating even with the cooling.
What's the I remember when we were in the NICU at Pindara, and I remember like looking to the side, and they were putting the like paddle pop stick type thing on her tongue, and she had no gag reflex. I really vividly remember that. What is that? Just from? Is that brain? Is that
it's
muscle?
Brainstem. It's a reflex. It's one of your most basic reflexes. So if you don't have that, you can't protect your own airway. So it's not a good sign. I remember one of the doctors putting his finger all the way back in her throat, and she just did nothing.
That was Millie. Yeah.
And they're like trying to trigger something, and she just didn't do it.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
So Wren had that in the beginning, but then was slowly losing that.
Yeah, she was actually moving her tongue and things like that. Matt got to give her milk, and she was moving it, and her pupils were a little bit reactive at the start, and it all just slowly went away. So yeah, they told us that, and we just it was like, they're like, it's up to you what we do now. We'll give you as much time with her as you'd like. So we called our parents and Edie and asked them to come up, and they put them in the waiting room, and the doctor's like, I'll go and talk to them. So we stayed with Wren, and she went and talked to them, and then she came back, and she's like, do you want them to come down? Like, we'll go get them. We'll go get Edie first and then come down. We walked down to the room, and I just vividly remember there was just 4 grown adults, and I think my dad was over by the window just staring out the window. My mum and Matt's mum were kind of in between Edie, just kind of standing there in shock, and I'm pretty sure Matt's dad was just sitting on the floor, and they were all just in tears and disbelief. And so we took Edie and took her down to see Wren. And thank God for her, because she just brought this happiness and joy. She didn't see Wren for the tubes and for everything going on. She's like, it's baby Wren. So we pulled the chair up, and she's standing on the chair looking over the isolate, and she's holding her hand and touching her hair, and she's like, it's baby Wren, in her little 2.5-year-old voice. And she was just besotted with her. She was just, gorgeous. And then the rest of the family came in, and everyone was just crying, and they took lots of photos, and then they got her out, and I had a big cuddle, and Edie got to sit next to me, and they just gave us time with her, really. And then they're like, we've got another patient coming in that probably needs this room. We're going to put you into a little room where you and Matt can stay with her. So they moved us. They were beautiful. One of the guys went downstairs, one of the male nurses, and brought us all like McDonald's, and he's like, eating something. He's like, just put food around us, and we went and got popped in this room, and they basically silenced all the monitors and things like that, and we just sat there and had cuddles. And we were staying in the parent the Royal Children's at that point. So my mum and dad got to stay there, and they had Edie with them. And we stayed with Wren and had lots of cuddles, and my dad popped back up and was lying on the bed with us and having cuddles and just talking, and we just kind of made a game plan for going forward. We got to dress her in her first outfit. So the next day was back and forth with COVID about visitors and things like that. They only wanted us to have immediate siblings, not their partners, coming up.
That's so hard.
And only for half an hour. But then they were fantastic. They managed to be able to, we were each allowed to have couldn't have the kids, which are our nieces and nephews. But so on the Friday, my sister and her husband, my brother and his fiance, and then Matt's sister and her husband all came up, and we all had they got about an hour each with us, where they got to meet her, and I cuddled her for some of it, and they all got to see her and say hi, and it was pretty fucking horrendous. Lots of tears, and and then that day they moved us back into the room, which was originally Wren's room, because they could, which was really nice, because that was just Wren's room up there. And then that night they put a single hospital bed in the room for us, and Matt and I got to stay in there and sleep in the bed next to her. We could have had her in the bed with us, but she was comfy, and
so she still had all her tubes and pain relief and everything at this point.
Intubated and everything, because otherwise we wouldn't have. She would have passed away. So we were just making our memories and getting her to meet everyone, and we had a pastoral care come up. We're not religious, but he did a naming ceremony, and I guess the other thing we did was we painted her nails pink, I think when she was being called, I think on day 1 or day 2.
Yeah. I have my you guys sent me a nail polish, which I love.
It's Wren's colour. Have you read the bottom of it, what the name of it's called?
One Night Stand. I hadn't read that, no.
Sold at the Royal Children's. Vegan friendly, it's lovely.
Oh, that's so funny.
So I'm just painting One Night Stand on my daughter's one-day-old
so
daughter's nails.
Funny. So tell us the story about the nail polish.
We wanted to connect Edie to her sister, so we painted her nails pink, and then my sister and they took Edie to Matt's cousin is a beauty therapist down here. She's got her own business, and she went in and she painted Edie's nails pink to connect the two, and then the little cousins got theirs done, and the grandparents when they were still down here, just to connect them. And then we sent the photos to friends and stuff like that. So over the next few days, I think will be over 100 people painted their nails pink, and sent in photos and just pink for Wren, and just showing their support for her. The midwives up at Warrnambool had either pink scrunchies, had little pink patches with butterflies or things on them, and everyone was wearing pink for her. Matt still wears, one hand's always got pink nail polish on it. Wears it every day.
Love that.
It's his way of people being able to talk to him and bring it up, and
that is unreal.
So we're a very big pink household now. Our Christmas tree is covered in pink baubles this year. It's probably a little bit excessive, but we love it.
I love it because people, I'm pink obsessed as well since Millie, and people will be like, oh, I love all of your pink. And sometimes if I'm just grabbing a coffee and running, it's like, oh, do I get into this? But it's for my daughter, or it's, it's like, but I'm obsessed with it. I think it's such a beautiful way to honour them, and, I just realised we both have matching drink bottles.
From green?
Yeah. It's so good. I love it, and I think that's so special for Edie, and yeah. Yeah,
it's actually when I saw your Instagram page and we first found it, I saw that you had pink for your funeral as well.
Yeah.
For Millie's funeral, and we full pink as well. Matt had a pink shirt, I had a pink dress, and yeah.
And Wren and Millie looked alike.
The dark hair.
Yes, you posted photos and I'm like, is that my Millie? And then on the cooling mat, it's actually very bizarre how similar. It all
So
is.
many similarities. And that's what I craved when after Wren had passed away, was families that had been through a similar journey. Because you don't see it very often,
No.
especially with like your HIE or like neonatal loss. It's not, yeah, it's usually something else. Like I still haven't found another mum that's had a cord prolapse with a similar story to us.
Yeah, and so is that
Yeah,
what the cause of death was for Wren? Is it what?
the cord prolapse was what caused her death, but she had
Fuck.
severe HIE. Yeah.
Okay, because of the
So
cord prolapse.
yeah, if we'd had a different birth, we would have had a healthy 20-month-old now.
Wow.
Um,
And yeah, wow.
yeah, that's what's hard to. It doesn't like whatever. Like I can't change it, but
Yeah.
that was probably the worst. Is the what ifs. Like when I first came in, should I have just asked for a Caesar straight away? Should I have been induced on a Good Friday? Like there's so many what ifs, and I can't change it.
Yeah.
I've had big meetings with the hospital, and they're like, it wouldn't have. There was nothing that could have foreseen this happening.
Sure.
And even
And
like talking to the women's and the kids, they're like, we've seen HIEs happen like similar, like severity to yours, and they've been born in a tertiary hospital. So I have to keep reminding myself of that it can still happen. But
yeah, is one of the things you've thought because it was a smaller hospital with no staff, and the time that it took for people to get in, and because it was a public holiday.
Yeah. So if it had been probably daytime hours on a weekday, I've been involved in cord prolapses as a midwife that have taken babies home completely healthy. So if things had gone differently, then we probably would have had a different experience. But unfortunately, that's not the hand we were dealt. So it's just kind of working our way through that, and parenting Wren the way we can. And
I remember when I was about 37 weeks pregnant, and I went to have an OB update, and she had gone from breech to oblique lie.
Oh,
yeah, she didn't move much further than that. But I remember him giving me the risks of a cord prolapse. He kept I was really nervous for that and very aware of what I had to do. He was like, if that happens, you just get into downward dog and don't fucking move. And I was thinking, okay, cool. I'm at home. Something happens. I just go into downward dog. And then I thought, what if I'm at the fucking shops? And I feel like, he literally, he was so serious. And now speaking to yourself, and actually, I think, how we were talking about Chris Wood just before we started. I'm sure on his episode, his wife had a cord prolapse.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. Because Matt and him are quite good friends.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
A lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Bless them.
So that was the position I was in as soon as I had a cord prolapse, and then if you're around medical personnel, they'll insert their hand and hold the head off the young. And basically they stay there until delivery. Yeah.
And that could have been enough to save her, however, time.
Time.
Far.
We didn't have the time. We had,
And so I think it's really beautiful. So you invited your family in, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, everyone got to come and meet her and spend time with her.
So we did that. And we did memory making. So I've got my little necklaces. My girlfriends, I don't know if you've heard of Linden Cook Jewellery. They do wax impressions and then engrave them. So it's solid gold, and my girlfriends, I purchased them thinking it'll get here in time, but my girlfriends back home, my midwives, they got it express delivered straight to the hospital. So I've got, I think it's Wren's big toe is on that one, and Edie's fingers on the other, and Matt's got a signet ring with Wren's print on it too.
I love that.
So we did that. We've got heaps of different hands and footprints, clay molds. We did all of that.
Yeah.
That was on the Saturday. We went downstairs on the Saturday that we had the in-charge nurse and our nurse looking after us, and we popped Wren in the pram with the ventilator, and we took her for a walk, and we got to go downstairs and sit in the playground in the sunshine, and my mum and dad, Matt's mum and dad, and Edie came down with us, and Edie got to push the pram with her sister, and
It's so
I got to
beautiful.
sit there and in the sun with Wren and watch Edie play on the playground like we should be doing now. And all the grandparents got their first and last cuddle. So we did that. And the plan was then on Sunday we were going to withdraw care. We're going to get heartfelt photography to come up and take some photos with Edie and everyone. We got upstairs after taking her downstairs, and I just looked at Matt and I'm like, she just looks tired.
Yeah.
We just said, Wren will let us know what she wants to do and we'll take her lead on it. And she just looked ready and exhausted. So we called the nurses in and we started the memory making and tried to get onto heartfelt and couldn't get onto them. Called my mum and dad back, who were driving to Dandenong to my auntie's to come get her, just to come back so we could go home and put the capsule back in the car because I was definite I wasn't leaving Wren in Melbourne. I've taken babies to the morgue before.
Wow.
And I didn't want to have the vision of where I knew where she'd be and to be leaving her in Melbourne and us heading home. So, yeah, I got to do skin to skin with Wren, stripped off and had her cuddled on me for ages. And we had music playing and then Matt was reading Wren stories. He read stories to her every day. We've got so many videos of Matt reading stories to Wren and then recording them to read to Edie while she was at home. So we did that and heartfelt. We hadn't heard from them, so the nurses were just taking lots of photos and videos for us. And then we said it was time, and they said that she might take 1 or 2 breaths and then she'd probably pass away. So they withdrew the tube, and I think she breathed up on her own for about half an hour. So she gave us time. The heartfelt photographer arrived unannounced and got photos of Wren alive on us without any tubes. And then she took some photos afterwards as well. We just turned her head so we could see her. So we know we've got photos where she's alive and passed away, and took lots of photos, had big cuddles and did all of that. And then our beautiful nurse, Pam, we had her, I think, 90% of the time we had Pam for at least. She let us walk down with Wren, so I got to carry her out of the hospital in my arms just like a baby, like a normal blanket on. We walked out of ED, no one knew, and popped her in the capsule with our little ice bags, and Edie was just definite. She's like, I want to take my baby sister home. So we went and picked her up from Matt's aunties, popped her in the car. Matt sat in the back between Wren and Edie holding their hands, and my dad drove the car and I was in the front, and we had a little convoy home to Warrnambool. And we came back home, had cuddles on the couch. My sister had been beforehand, and we got home to the front deck lined with flowers and tea lights and fairy lights and everything, and all through the front of the house, and then inside were all little flowers. And then her kids there, now they would have been 6, 4 and 2, I think. They Melissa wrote Wren on pink paper and they coloured in her name, and we had it stuck up on the sliding doors, and we got to take her inside and have cuddles on the couch, and we stayed there for a little bit, and then the funeral director came and got her, I think at like 1 a.m. That was the hardest part by far, was actually letting her go. And they have a little papoose kind of capsule that they pop them in, and he went to zip it up. I'm like, you can't zip up my baby. You can't cover her face. So he's like, right, move her up, and it's got a flap that comes down, and we just covered her up. And once I finally let go, I just remember I went to my dad and I was sobbing on my dad, and he just ducked out. I never saw him leave with her, which is probably the best thing. Yeah, that was just a blur after that. We just disbelief that was our last time with her. And yeah, I'm forever grateful that we took her home. Because you hear so many stories of the walk out of the hospital with empty arms, and I'm grateful that I didn't have to do that, because I don't know. You're bloody strong to do it.
Well, I mean, we didn't know. I shouldn't say that. I was going to say we didn't know we had options. We did have options, but when you're in that moment, you're like, it was like, we can't take her home. Do you know what, like, it was
like, what do you do? How do you do it?
Yeah, like, I just love that you did do that, and I've heard of people that doing that, and we just couldn't fathom the thought of it, like transporting her things. But then when you said it now, it just sounds so beautiful and so natural that you would do that. It's like, of course you'd take her home, but for us it was like, we can't, like, we were scared of hurting her even though she had passed, you know, like
they're still your baby, and you just want to protect them at all costs. And I think the only reason that we did half the things we did is because I've done it for other families, and I've always said to Matt, if this had happened, this is what I want to do. And we had that chat pre it ever happening, which is horrendous, but I think
so great to be
lucky in a way, and we're lucky in a way, but then it's a really weird thing to say you're lucky about, like, that we know our options.
I know.
And everyone should have access to that and should be able to be informed of that.
Well, that's what I kind of hope from the podcast, that people listen. And I know that people are listening that haven't lost babies, like, you know, people are listening just to be educated or just to know. And I certainly know now that if anyone was to reach out to me that I know, that's like, so the day we found out that we were losing Millie, reached out to a girl that I remembered from 3 years earlier at church that had lost her child. And I just wrote, I just found out we're not bringing our girl home. How the fuck do I breathe? Like, how do I get through the next fucking 24 hours, 12 hours, whatever? And I just, like, because I just didn't even know. It was like, I can't even fucking breathe right now. It's like, how do you get through this? Yeah. And she was so amazing. You know, she was like, hold them, smell them, touch them, take everything in. Here's a beautiful playlist to play. Like, you know, all the things that you did as well, you know, like read to them and let your family meet them. But I wouldn't have known, like, any of those things, and you just are, like, relying on the midwives and the NICU nurses to kind of guide you, and they offer you things, but then you're like, you just can't comprehend what any of that looks like.
Yeah, it's so, and they're not trained in it. It's not part of your university training, bereavement care. Doctors and midwives and nurses aren't. We're not trained. We learn on the job.
What the?
Yep. So that's one thing that we're really trying to change. There's an amazing midwife that works for Francis Perry. Her name's Eliza Strauss. She's a bereavement midwife now, and she founded the Perinatal Loss Centre.
Okay.
And there's an organisation called COPE, so Centre of Perinatal Excellence, and she's done a course for midwives and frontline staff on how to look after families going through loss and what to do and how to best care for the babes. So when we got back, I just needed to do something for Wren. So we did Wren's gift, which was, we raised 16,000.
Amazing.
And I think we put 39 midwives through the course from down in Melbourne. And then I overhauled we've got an angel cupboard. So basically I bought everything that we had at the Royal Children's. I mimicked that supplies down here in Warrnambool so that families have access to the same thing down here as what we had access to. Because it doesn't seem fair that we got all these beautiful experiences and families that aren't in a tertiary system can't have that. And Southwest have been phenomenal. We met with the CEO a couple of weeks after Wren, and we spoke about bereavement care and the there's family rooms at the Royal Children's. We didn't use them, but there's to spend time with your baby after they pass away. And he's like, we'd love that here. And he's like, why don't we have it here? So
Wow.
Southwest are are in the process. It's nearly complete of turning one of their rooms at the up on mid-floor, a double room, into a bereavement room. So
That's
families can stay as long as they
amazing.
want. It's been fully decked out. It's got a kitchenette, a big cuddle bed. It's a double bed. They use in palliative care. It's like a single bed, but it can go out to nearly a king single double. So both parents
Yeah.
can lie in the bed with their babe and all those nice things so that families can have that time. So I don't know where I'm going with this one. But,
That's so powerful. That's amazing, and it's huge, and it's, I'm sure you don't even know the lengths that has gone to, and who that's going to help in future. Like, and it's so shit that we have to go through these things for then things like this to be done. But and I know people say to me all the time, "You're doing Millie so proud," and you're like, "Oh," but
you give it all back. You give it all
yeah,
back if you just had them.
100%.
I love that the beautiful people I've met. I love that we've been able to help people. But selfish bitch, I will give it all back.
Give me
and
my
just,
child back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've given the hand you dealt, and I felt like I had a platform at my hospital, like it's my workplace. Like we've been screaming out for a room for years as midwives, and I think, if you don't use a platform that you've got, you're the same with your podcast. Like if you've got that platform,
Yeah.
you've got to use it. You've got to do something. It's your way of, I think, honouring them and parenting and using your parenting energy in a different way to what you would have done, I guess.
Well, it feels like nothing goes wasted. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, well, I have the ability to do this. I feel like I'm in a space where I love to hear people's stories, and I love the educational side of it. I love the healing it feels for you as a parent to be able to share the story and all the other bits. And like, I learn from every story that I hear, and then it just kind of, for me, feels like, that Millie's just keeps getting living, like it just
you get to
keeps her alive, like it just feels
it's
like
saying her name. It's so important, just to be able to continue to talk about them. It keeps them in the present. We're not looking back; they're here with us, and it's really powerful. I don't know if you've read a book. Have you read the book "Ask Me His Name" or "Say His Name"?
No.
It's by Elle Wright.
Okay.
Highly recommend you reading that.
Okay.
It's an English love, and she lost her first little boy, Teddy.
Is that Teddy's Wish? Do they have an Instagram?
Yes.
Teddy's Wish? No,
I think as well. But she's Feathering the Empty Nest is her Instagram handle.
Okay.
And he passed away from genetics as well. He was born and then required CPR, and it was cool. It's the only one that I found that was similar to my story in the early days, and I just lapped it up. And then she wrote another book, Bump in the Road, which was about her then IVF and fertility journey.
Shit.
Post him to conceive.
Fuck.
Because then obviously after that we went down the same sort of thing to conceive Noah. And it was just nice to kind of see someone had been there before you. As shit as it is, you'd never want anyone to go through it, but to see that someone's come out the other side, and
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so you have I'll jump forward a little bit. So we had our final day with Wren. You spent that time at home with her, and then the funeral home came and got her and took her away.
Yep.
And then did you need to choose to have an autopsy or not, or you already knew that you didn't have to?
Usually with HEI, they're meant to be coroner's cases, but because they had they could definitely say this is the reason, we didn't have to do anything. So we got to take her home, and I think that was Saturday night, Sunday morning she was taken, and then I think it was Wednesday we had her funeral. The funeral director came out a few times, and he'd always come out and say, I've just checked on her. She's peaceful. She's resting. We never went and visited her again because I didn't want to do that. I'd seen her deteriorate from being nice and pink and that was enough. I wanted to remember how I remembered her. But he let Edie, he's like, do you want to write any letters to pop in the coffin or anything like that? Or does Edie want to choose a toy? So she went and chose a toy. There's like little rattle balls and they've got little holes in them. And it was one of her favourite ones as a baby. So that's with Wren. And she still remembers that. She's like, Wren's got my ball, Mum. And I went, what are you talking about? And we'd forgotten that we'd even put it in. But she still talks about her daily. So we did that. And then we buried her out at Tower Hill. It's in between Warrnambool and Croy, where my parents now live, and it overlooks the ocean. She's got horses on one side, dogs and alpacas, and there's a big tree, lots of native trees, and there's one tree right near her filled with wrens. So yeah, we buried her there it's a triple plot. So Matt and I will be able to go be with her. And she's got her little friend. It's all adults there pretty much, but she's got her little friend directly opposite her, little Levi, who passed away at 24 weeks, I think. So she's got one little friend. So she's out there, and like it was Easter, so rabbits are a big thing for us, for Wren. Like we've got pink rabbits and wrens. And there's just rabbits everywhere, which is just a spa.
Like like actual wild rabbits.
Yeah, they're just everywhere. They've dug a grave into a little ground a fair bit, and we've got a little rabbit statue there, and yeah,
that's special.
So so she's just resting there, and we've got to go out there today, and we're putting up her Christmas decorations.
Oh, I love that.
Because last year she had a beautiful little white cross, and we just hung baubles on it that Edie chose, but now she's got her headstone. I've just got like little Christmas trees that are solar, and then we've just kind of bedazzled them with little baubles that are rainbow. So we'll go pop that out for her with Edie this afternoon. And
I love that. I guess when the conversation came up for us about having a funeral, I was in shock because I was like, what the fuck? How am I organising a funeral for my child? And I remember saying something about burial, and Dylan went, oh no, we'll do cremation. And I just went, oh, okay. Because like for me, I'd never ever had the thought that I need to have this conversation. And I know that my parents are going to be buried. So I guess I just kind of thought that. And so we got Millie cremated, and we have her ashes here. But I think it's so beautiful that you have a space to go visit her. Like you can, you've got that, and you can decorate it. And yeah, that's super sweet.
And we've got it's hard because like, what do you do? One of my other girlfriend, similar to your friend that you messaged from church, she lost her first daughter, Sadie, at 34 weeks, and she was in my mother's group. Her son and my daughter are only a couple of weeks apart. So I've been messaging her, and she's got little Sadie, and she's been cremated, and now they've got a spot they always used to go at the beach, but then they've also put a little plaque up at the local cemetery where they can visit her as well. And
that's nice.
It's and we've got a big bench at home that's filled with like Wren's little remote box full of her hospital stuff and candles and pictures and a big I don't know if you've heard of Grotty Lottie. She's an artist.
No.
And she's got one of her things is called Hold Me Closer, Tony Dancer instead of Tiny Dancer, and it's two wren birds, a boy and a girl, and it's this massive print that we've got framed above it as well. So we've just got wren birds throughout our entire house now. But we've got our little set spot, and depending on the time of year and celebrations, we decorate that with Easter or Christmas. And
Dylan wants to, so he initially wanted to scatter Millie's ashes up where he proposed to me on Burley Hill, like Burley Cliff.
Beautiful.
But I was like, well, I originally said yes, and then I was like, I don't want to scatter her ashes. Like, I want to keep them. And so I think it's just a thing that people naturally do. Oh, yeah, we scatter the ashes. But I'm like, I actually don't want to do that. So I've said that to him, and he was like, that's fine. Yeah. So he's going to get a little plaque and put it on the rock where he proposed to me.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so nice.
I don't know if
we're allowed to do it, but
Yeah.
do it.
We did it for his dad. His nan and pop were actually had a little stone opposite my old house randomly. So I was renting. His grandparents had a plaque, and so we put his dad's one on that rock as well. So Millie's will be in different states, but yeah, I just thought that's something nice where we can go and sit there.
Definitely.
But yeah, I definitely don't want to scatter the ashes. I'm like, I just want to keep them.
Yeah, my another girlfriend I've met that through loss, her little boy Hudson, she's got his ashes, but then she's also got some in a necklace. That she's got that she wears around her neck, so she's always got him with her as well. There's so many different ways you can have them with you.
I'll have them. Yeah, I got a ring made for Dylan with her ashes, a little bit of her ashes in it, and that was for Father's Day, because it was only Father's Day like 4 weeks after we lost her.
Yeah.
And Dylan's birthday in the same week, so I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do for him? So we did that, and then I got her ashes put in my tattoo.
Yes, I love that.
Which is
love
just
it.
and that just for me, I'm like, you can't take that away from me now. So that's
she's there.
But
yeah,
I know, and I still want to get like a ring made with the breast milk. So I was similar to you, where I was still like trying to get colostrum and expressing, and because you think you're bringing your baby home, so you're like trying to get your milk in. So I've got it all in the freezer, and then I wasn't able to donate it because I'd had the anti-D injections.
Yes.
So now it's just like, well, okay, I'm gonna have to make some jewelry out of that. And
there's even a lady that will do paintings with your breast milk, and yet she does like sonograms and things.
Oh wow!
And she can paint like watercolors using your breast milk in it. My sister-in-law found it for me, and I've still got breast milk sitting there as well. And there's so many really cool things you can do.
Totally. Totally. Normally my next steps, like normally during the potty, I'll ask like, what kind of things did you have for support and stuff after? However, people say much of the same thing. And so what I wanted to ask you was your journey once you'd lost Wren. What was it like trying to fall pregnant again, being pregnant, and then having Noah?
Oh. It was brutal. Because of my polycystic ovaries, I didn't get a period between Edie and Wren, so 20 months. And we were just kind of waiting, because I asked them, obviously the first thing we said is like, we just felt that need to have a baby at home. And they're like, yep, you can go again straight away. Gave us the all clear just
after Wren?
The Caesar. Yeah, after Wren.
Really?
I was really lucky. Decided to go private with the obstetrician that was at the birth of Edie and Wren, and who I did my fertility treatment with Edie. She's phenomenal. So she made sure she went and asked at the hospital and spoke with all the consultants there and said, this is what we want to do. Does anyone have any objections? They did a lot of research into it to see if it was appropriate to do. And because I didn't have a child at home, they deemed it low enough risk to conceive again with a fresh Caesar, but I wasn't allowed to labour, which fine. Happy to definitely not go through that trauma. Just get the baby here and safe. So we started that process of ovulation induction, because my period never came, and then my periods went really short, and it just wasn't happening. I think we had 5 or might have even been 7 tries in like 4 months, because my cycles were that quick. I was doing kinesiology, acupuncture, everything to try and kind of rejig my body as well, and to help me mentally cope, because we were not in the headspace to be trying to conceive a baby. But you kind of have to go down that pathway.
Out of hormones, PCOS, trauma, grief, you know, all the things.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not.
And then you've got to try and connect with your partner as well, and you're like, no.
Love
you, but
tell me about it.
It's so there's just so many things to unpack. But we fell pregnant in the end, and
using ovulation. So ovulation
induction.
Is that like Clomid? Is that no?
Yeah, it's one. You can use Clomid. There's a couple of different. There's Pregnal, and there's a few different types. Basically, getting frequent ultrasounds to check your lining and your follicles, and you want a couple of follicles to grow, no more than 2, 3. And then you're basically triggering that to release. Same as what you do for, I guess, an egg collection, but in a smaller amount.
Yeah.
And then just
timed sex.
Timed sex basically. Yeah. So we did that, and in the end it worked. But yeah, because I just don't ovulate. My body just likes to hold them and then just not get any bigger. Just like,
crazy.
Don't do
that.
Yeah. That's a pass from me. So yeah, we conceived, and I'm like, all right, we're going down a completely different pathway. I'm a public midwife, so I'm always very pro public care because it's fantastic in Australia. But like, right, I'm going private. I'm having my set obstetrician, which is Kristen, and my girlfriend's the set midwife there, and she also works at the base, and she's my neighbour as well. I'm like, her, fantastic, don't have to change anything. Just for that really consistent care. I didn't have to repeat my story, although everyone in Warrnambool knows my story and all the nurses know my story. But I'm like, I just needed that safe little bubble. And we started seeing a psychologist as well. Found out, I never found out the sex with Edie or Wren, but we found out the sex really early on, that it was a boy, which really threw me quite massively. I just thought I was a girl mum, and it just kind of hit home further that, like, I knew it was never about replacing Wren, but I just, I wanted a girl, and I wouldn't change it now for the world, but it's a lot to process that your journey's not going to look the same as what it would have looked like if you had Wren at home.
Wow.
So it was a lot to unpack. But he's the cutest little thing, and I love him to bits. But I'm glad that I did that, and I had that time to process in the pregnancy that it was a little boy. We let Edie choose his name. We gave her 2 names, and stupid, telling a 3-year-old that she could choose her brother's name, and so everyone knew his name way before. I'm like, don't know what we were thinking. So she chose Noah, and tried to make, it's really hard to connect with. I found it really difficult connecting with him. Just with everything that had happened, and not wanting to connect because I didn't want to be connected and then lose him as well. And it was hard. It was a really hard pregnancy, even with the psychologist appointments and things like that. I spent the last week, from 36 weeks to 37 weeks, in hospital. I had lots of reduced movement, and just mentally, I was spent. I was done. I just needed him to be here and to be okay. I didn't care if he went into the nursery. I'm like, nursery's better. If he needed some CPAP or something, like, it's better than intubation and dying. So we did that. I was in there, but we planned, going back a few steps, we'd planned it all with the hospital, like, since the hospital saying we're going to do the bereavement room. They actually I rolled out a bereavement program. So one of my best mates is now the bereavement program, the midwife and project manager, and she's overhauling all of the bereavement care at Southwest Healthcare.
Wow.
So she came over to our house just on her day off, and we went through a big birth plan with her. Pros and cons, like, what's plan A, what's plan B, if things go wrong, if I go into labour, where are we at, who's going to be present. So that was, had my set midwife, so she was going to be there, who my obstetricians would be, which theatre we'd go into, because I did not want to go into the theatre that I'd birthed Wren in. Didn't want that anaesthetist, which they were very accommodating with. I'm pretty sure he hates me. There's no love lost. It's not his fault, and it's not it's just is what it is. But needed to not have people that were present at that birth, at Wren's birth, there again. And we had a walk through theatre with Matt beforehand, when I was like 34 weeks pregnant, with the head anaesthetist there and the head of theatre, and they went through all the pros and cons and what we can and can't do, and to try and make it as accommodating as possible. And we ended up on the day, because my Caesar date got brought forward, we had the head anaesthetist, and he's phenomenal. I love him. We had a full female theatre team, apart from the anaesthetist. Matt was allowed to be present for the whole thing because normally they have to go wait while you get your spinal popped in and things like that. But they let Matt stay with me the entire time. I had 2 midwives in the end, so 2 close friends. One that I'd done hypnobirthing with for Wren, and who also looked after me on the day after Wren was born, and then one of my best mates, Hannah. So she just took photos. She brought her camera in and filmed everything. And then we had a paediatrician there. And he filmed stuff as well on my phone. And then as it was all happening, Phil, who's the head, was the paediatrician that was going to be there. He's like, now, Maddy, this is not because we're worried about anything. We're just here because we love you and your family. And the 2 other paediatrician consultants came in as well for Noah's birth. So the paediatrician that was there for Edie's birth, and then Greg, and that was also then told us that Wren was going to pass away. He came and then so I've been there.
They just wanted to be there to experience that moment,
to support us. So they were all in tears, and it was really lovely. And we got to hear him cry, and he needed CPAP, and he went back to the nursery.
Okay, wow, fuck.
That is okay because it was. I knew it was it wasn't fatally. It was just a little bit of a He just needed it, and that's okay. And I could kind of deal with that. Like I knew that he was in the best hands, and a 37-week cold Caesar and a boy, because boys are just naughty. They never got as much go as girls after a birth where they're not squeezed out. So I'm like, he just needed it, and that's okay. So they got me back to recovery and then took me straight down once I had a good block and I was comfortable, and they took me straight into the nursery, which was hard because that's where they'd wheeled me with Wren.
Fuck, yeah.
Straight back into that room. But this time, instead of Wren was lying there on the little isolate, not moving, he was just a little turd. And they popped him straight on my chest, skin to skin, and they're like, all right, if he doesn't, we talked about it and using surfactant. So it's a steroid that they intubate and pop it into their lungs to help them just to breathe and to coat their lungs to make it easier for them to breathe. It's a naturally occurring one. They were going to do that just so that he wasn't on CPAP for a long period of time, just to get him back to me quicker. They're like, right, if he's not doing this by this time, we'll do that. And I hadn't even thought about it. I'm like, yep, cool, that sounds great. I'm like, oh, they're going to intubate my child. I don't want that. So he was skin to skin cuddling me, and he knocked his mask off, and he was really snoozy and working hard, and he knocked his mask off, and he jumped on, had a feed, started crying, and started breathing normally. Never seen it happen before. And he's just like, I'm done. So then they just took everything off him, and he stayed in the nursery overnight. And we went home 2 days later. Didn't even stay the full 3 days, and we got to take him home. It was but
it's so beautiful. And did the anxiety does it go away ever? Am I going to be anxious for the rest of my life?
The first night he slept in the room, because the first night he was in the special care nursery, and the next night he came into the room, and I just couldn't sleep. My adrenaline was so high, and I was so overtired, and I'm like, I need someone to be. He's not allowed out of my sight, but someone needs to watch him, because I can't sleep knowing that he's not being watched. And I was just so highly strung, and I just needed sleep. And then the next day my mum came and held him as well, and I slept, and then I started to function. And it did take a while being home and not being anxious about him. It takes, you're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And we're 6 months in now, and I'm comfortable with him now. Like, I'm not paranoid, but it does get better. And he's been incredibly healing. Like, it's just that little bit in your heart is healed, I guess, in a way. But Wren's still never going anywhere. And where Edie talks about Wren to Noah, and like we've got photo bubbles everywhere that she can flick through and he can flick through, and we're just doing our best to kind of be a family of 5 with one missing, really. And it does get better. It changes, I think, and we adapt, and I think you can feel joy and grief at the same time. It's a tough one, and it doesn't feel like it. It didn't feel like it for a very long time. And there's still days where it just comes back and slaps you in the face, and or at night time I'll be lying there and I look at him in the cot and I'm like, fuck. And I see Wren and her lying in the cot next to me, and I'm like, this is
fucked up.
Yeah, it's just shit. And you just see then your thoughts go back over to everything that happened again, and you just spiral down, and you just have to try and go, I'm here, I'm present, things okay, and I can't change what's happened, and trying to reset from there. But it's hard not to go down that rabbit hole and want to change what you can't change. And
and I think that's the hard thing as well. Like I obviously didn't sleep for like the first 3 months really, and then like everything goes over in your head, and then I got really good for a bit, I guess, and then we got these results back and they were not what we were expecting, which they were a better, quote unquote, better result than what we were expecting. But then I still had to reprocess that because I'd kind of like, it was genetically inherited is what we initially thought. Then it wasn't. Then it was just a 1 in 50,000 chance at mutation of conception. And then, and then I found out that her bones broke on birth, not because of the genetic disease, but because she didn't move in utero. And so she wasn't strong. And I'm like, I told everyone she wasn't moving. Nobody believed me, So it's just like now that's been going around in my head again. Like, why didn't anyone fucking listen to me? Like, but, and that's not putting blame on anyone else. But then there's also blame on myself of like, why didn't I push more? Like, why didn't I, But again, it doesn't. I know, and it doesn't change the outcome. It would have changed the trauma of the birth, and it would have changed the trauma for me and the team. But, the outcome would have been the same.
And that's what you have to keep going back to, I think, is like it's not going to change anything. But it's so hard to not get caught in those thoughts, and just my mind goes back and I'm like, if we'd done this, we'd be doing this now. And like those little things that you wish you could change that would then change the whole life. And because I'm a planner, I like things planned out. So I don't know about you. Like if I was given those, same as you, that prognosis and things like that, I'm like, you've changed it. It's like someone changing dinner plans. I'm like, I have read that menu and this is where we are going and this is what's happening. And now I have to rethink everything, and it's not okay. I get really irritated, and it takes me a while to then sit down and process and breathe through it and work through it. And then when you work through it, you're okay. But it's a journey to get to that point as well.
It really is. It really is. And even though, even if something's a better outcome than what was originally, whatever, but it's like, well, hold on, I had my head around that and now I've got to change that. And
you still got to process it all.
It's just literally day by day. But
it's,
I really do see us bringing home babies. It's something that I definitely know will happen, and I am petrified of it, but also excited for it. And so I love hearing your story and your vulnerability and your honesty, and
it's finding your village to get you through it. I had a couple of close friends that have become close friends, just to go, this is what I'm feeling at this time. And I had another mum reach out and go, she had different gender to what she had with her loss of her little boy, and she's like, this is what I felt, and it does get better. And I think reaching out and like letting yourself be vulnerable on that journey, and it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to get there day by day, and you've just got to do what you need to do to get through it. And it does. I don't know, I've gone off on my train of thought here, but it's, I don't know if you can't understand what I'm trying to say, but it is tough, but you do get through it. And and
it is nice to hear. It is nice to hear from people who are you're not only a couple of years ahead of us in terms of the grief and the loss, but also that you've gone through and had another baby, and, you know, to know that that does get lighter, because I know I'm going to be nervous during pregnancy, and more so the Caesar, like that's where our trauma happened. But also I do believe you when you say the grief gets lighter, you know, like, because I have felt it already a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
It's not as 24-hour consuming. Like I can leave the house and not feel like I'm a psychopath. But
You grow with it. Like it doesn't, I think my psychologist said, like, there's some days where your life's going to be this big ball and the grief's a marble. And then there's other days where it's just going to constrict around it. And that's just where you function and you get to. And it's just going through the motions, and then if we're never going to not have a day where we don't think about our girls, and it's never going to be, but that's okay. And I think I keep reminding myself the reason we feel this heavy grief and this heartache is because we love them so much. Grief is love, and as much as it pains to her, it means that they're still there, they're still present, we still love them, we haven't forgotten them. And it's okay to feel sad, but it's also okay to feel happy. And
how blessed were we to have them as well. Like,
yeah, exactly. We got to, like Matt says, we weren't there for her first breath, but we were there for her last. And it's bittersweet, but there's moments like our kids are our everything, and just because she's not here with us doesn't mean that she's not a part of our family, and Millie's not a part of yours, and your kids will grow up knowing about their big sister who's watching over them, and that's going to be a massive part of their life. And you can make them as big or as little as you want them to be, but we've chosen that Wren's presence is as big as her siblings, and that's how we want it, and we talk about her every day, and everything we do is for her and for our other two. I don't see that changing. And Edie will always make sure that, because she tells everyone, she's like, I've got a baby sister. She died. You're like, oh,
bless.
And she tells everyone, and everyone's like, oh. I'm like, yep, she does, yeah. And there's days where she says that, and I've bawled. Like, we're at dancing, and she told someone, I've got a baby sister, and she died, and I just sobbed. And then there's days where she says it, and I'm like, yeah, good, go girl, that's cool.
Go girlfriend, yeah, that's right.
And like, there's so many triggers to come, like kin forms, like siblings and ages, and I'm like, Wren, forever 8 days old, and you're like, oh, there's so many. But like, I could leave it off, but I'm like, people need to know. I want to put that on. Yeah, absolutely. She's here, she's present, and Edie should be allowed to acknowledge her sister as well.
Yep. Because how many other kids might be going through it that aren't brave enough to talk about it, or
and that stigma needs to be broken. That like we had Matt's auntie had a stillbirth 30-something years, 33 maybe years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And she had an oldest, it was her second child as well. And her daughter has a lot of grief and trauma around that, because all the kids were like, you don't have a sister, we can't see her, she's not here, you don't have a sister. Like, and those sort of things, and you're like, what's Edie going to go through? But times have changed a lot, and everyone, it's not shoved to the side. They're acknowledged, and it's really important to keep doing that, I think, and pushing for, that to be.
I think so.
It's not a taboo thing to talk about.
No, and I think the innocence of a child is so beautiful. Like the fact that she can just openly talk about it, and yes, it might make people feel uncomfortable, but how beautiful that she's just like wants to talk about her little sister.
Yep.
And that will become easier for her as she gets older. And we have a friend who also lost her second child, and she's since had her third. And her little girl draws. So her name's Harper, and the daughter that died was Bronte. And Harper now draws pictures of her sister Bronte in heaven with her new friend Millie.
Oh,
I know. So she drew a picture and put it in our letterbox, because Harper, and like Bianca says, like Harper always talks about her playing with Bronte. Like, so she's got this like beautiful imagination or spirit or whatever it is that but she drew a picture of Bronte playing in heaven with her new friend Millie. And I'm like, that is so divine.
That's beautiful. And the little things like that, like Edie's like, oh no, Wren did that. Like if she does something naughty, or like she'll bring her into conversation. You're like, oh my God, she did not draw on the carpet. Wren did not do that.
That is so funny.
But she brings her in, like brings her up in conversation where we don't have to. But I think that was the hardest thing, was having a 2.5, 3-year-old going, is this baby going to die too? When we said we were pregnant. And I'm like, no. So we had a lot to navigate there with her. And then she's like, then she knew you were having a boy. And she's like, oh, it's okay, only girls die. I'm like,
shit.
So it's where their heads go, and you kind of, there's so much grief. And my nieces and nephews have said the same thing, is this baby going to die too? So it's sad that they now have, it's not like that they're not naive anymore. Like it's kind of
that. But that is sad. But the fact that no other generations prior to us did talk about it, we all thought this never happened. So we were all like gone through life thinking that shit ain't going to happen to me. I mean, and you even work in the industry. You're like, but you know, maybe it's not a bad thing that they've been subject to it, because I mean, not that they're ever going to think, because, you know, we always think it's not going to happen to us, but knowledge is power, right?
Yeah. So. And they're concerned and things about it, but then there's so much love as well. Like it's my little nephew draws pictures, and he for Wren's anniversary he did a little prayer, and because he goes to Catholic school, and he did we're not religious, but he did a little prayer for her, and I'm like, stop it, that's adorable. Like, and they just and they talk about her, and they're sad that they never got to meet her. But still, 20 months on, you've got these little kids still talking about her, and she's just part of our family, and she always will be. And it's nice that it's not been kind of compartmentalized, popped in that little box, popped away. She's here, she's present, and everyone talks about her, which is nice. And it's not sad and uncomfortable. We talk about her, and it's not horrendous.
And I think that's beautiful, because I know, like, I have interviewed people where they've said they've not even told their baby's story because they're worried people don't want to hear it, or they, you know, don't know how to talk about it. And I feel like if people are listening that know someone that's gone through it and they've never heard the story, like, ask them the story, or at least just say, like, I was thinking of you today, I saw a wren bird and thought of you, or I saw this, or because we do, like you mentioned, it's that book before, say his name. You just want to hear their name. You want to hear that people have thought of you.
And I think the more we talk about them, like, anyone can talk to me. I'm an open book about Wren, and I talk about her every day as well. And I think the more we talk about it, the more people feel then comfortable to talk about them. And like, I'll have people still, they'll send me a photo, and it'll be of a Wren or of something pink and things like that. And it's just. It doesn't take much, and that's just like, we had the pink nail polish. We met this beautiful man through another lost family, and he does Ironman comps, and he just did he's 50, just did his last Ironman competition, and he ran. We've met him once, or Matt's met him. I haven't even met him. I've only spoken to him online. Painted his nails pink, ran the race with Wren nails, and he sent us a video at the end. He also runs for little Sylvie Body. He has a S on his hand in a heart, and the pink nails, and you see him go across the line. He puts his hands up and then does a love heart and looks up. And
goosebumps.
Little things like the amount that he took Wren on the run with him, and that's just so things like that. It means the world to us, and it, for someone that doesn't know us, just knows a little bit about our story, to care enough to do that is just
and something just so simple. So it's like, that's so simple and easy for someone to do, but it like literally means the world to a family who's they're running for. Yeah.
Like, a girlfriend just went out and put little Christmas things like last year out at Wren's grave, and just, or else I get a photo and someone will be sitting there reading her a book, and you're like,
I love that.
Just little, like, they don't have to do it, but they do it because they want to, and it just means
and it's
everything.
Also a credit to you guys, and I know it is a credit to us as well, that people do know about our babies because we are so brave and or talk about them so openly, and they made such a big impact because we have the courage to bring light to a conversation that most people don't want to bring light to.
we've got to give them a voice that they didn't get to have, and which is just so unfair that they didn't. But do what we can do for them, and you just hope if it helps one person, job done. It's
Well, I'm sure everything you've done is helping way more than one person with the, the money you've raised to train the midwives and the bereavement room and all of that. Like, they are phenomenal things that you've been able to implement in such a short time.
Yeah. And I think credit to the beautiful midwives at Warrnambool. They want to improve, and they are great as they are, but the fact they're still striving to do better and to advocate for families and to know the best line of care. And it's really hard for bereavement care because no one fits into it. There's no set protocol that's ever going to work for just every family. Like, every person's going to need something slightly different, and to educate yourself to then be able to give them those options. It's really empowering for them to do as midwives, and
I can't believe you guys aren't trained in it at uni. Like, I just can't.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard that so many midwives are listening to the podcast because, like, obviously just hearing people's stories and what's helped and what hasn't. And I'm like, and then somebody did say to me, you get like a half day or something. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is not something, like a whole fucking curriculum. Like,
there should be a unit for bereavement care. Because I remember studying, and then I did my accelerated grad year for midwifery up in Melbourne, and they're like, all right, you're going into this, and I'm like, okay, like, I've at least got experience. And that's when I was at the Royal Children's, same thing again, like, I was doing afterlife care for a patient, and you don't want to fuck up. You just don't want to do something wrong that's going to scar a family for life. Like, anything that you do, they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives, and you've got to get it right. And I think it's the most humbling experience, and I think it's always been something that's really close to my heart because you're providing that care for that family and for that child, and it's the most important thing you'll ever do. And to know that it's been done right and with respect is just, it's everything. And if you fuck it up, it makes my skin crawl to know that if someone, like, what trauma that's then going to bring onto a family.
I think one of the biggest things, we got interviewed a couple of weeks ago by a midwife on the Central Coast who was training a room of 17 midwives. And I said to them, I don't know what drugs you gave me. I don't know what you said to me. I said, but I know the way that I felt when the midwives were around me. And I think that's the biggest thing that I took away from it, was like, I remember them just being gentle. They just guided me. They gave me options. They also would say to me, like, if you don't know the answer to this, that's okay, but just nod and I can organize it. And I was just shrugging my shoulders the whole time. Like, they would just, every time they'd come on a shift, they'd be like, they'd open the door and they'd peek in, they'd be like, hi, how are you today? Like, like, I felt like they really gave a fuck about me as a person. And how's Millie? And I'm like, can I show you photos? And I'd be showing them videos and photos of Millie. And like, I just felt like they genuinely cared about me. And that was, they might have fucked up on who knows what, but I wouldn't know, because I just know that they really cared about my final day and experience with Millie, and they made it as accommodating as possible. Kindness
and love, and that's
they
that's
cried
what you
with
need.
us. They cried. They cuddled me. Like, they were just genuine, empathetic human beings, and that was what I remember the most.
And it makes such a difference. And that's why there's probably midwives that, and I think there's some that don't like doing that sort of stuff, and that's just putting your hand up and going, I'm not the appropriate person to be doing this. They need someone that can give them their 100%. And it's so special and rewarding to be able to give that to a family. And I'm so glad that you had a beautiful experience, because it does. That's what you remember. And when you think back on your time, as horrible as it was, you felt loved and supported and safe. And
which then give us the space to give that to Millie.
If they can provide that space for you, then phenomenal, because that's how then we can actually put all of our energy into our girls and get
one of the midwives' shifts had finished. She stayed back just to complete the day with us, like just all things like that. Like, it was, I just said to her, I was like, is this just your job? Like, I thought she was actually just there to do this particular job. She goes, no, I just have a real passion for it. So it was just a coincidence that it was like one of her third shifts for the fortnight. Like, she wasn't full time. And we happened to get her, and she just stayed on for longer, and she just,
makes a difference, doesn't it?
Guided us through the most perfect day. So
we had our doctors stayed back, our nurse at the Royal Children's, she stayed back as well. Like, they were all in the room when Wren was passing, but they were all against the wall. They didn't make a sound. They were silent, and they were there if we needed them. But so respectful and like just phenomenal humans. Like, they just made everything that little bit easier, which we're so grateful for.
Wow. You made it. Time goes quick, hey?
It does, doesn't it? Oh, hour and a half. Jesus.
I know. But it's been amazing to hear your story. It's been amazing to have your knowledge from the medical side of things, but also, you saying things like, you were just in mum mode and you didn't even have that, that nurse mind switched on sometimes. I loved hearing about, the way that you've been able to include your first child and your third child all in the mix of grief, like, understanding pregnancy after loss and all of the things. It's been a huge couple of years for you guys.
Parenting after loss. Whoa. Don't do it. It's hard. It's a challenge, but you come out the other side. Yeah.
It's worth it. Yeah. I can't wait to do it. I know it's going to be scary, but I can't wait.
You'll smash it. You'll smash it, and just find your village, and you makes such a difference when you've got people around just to bounce questions off and support yourself.
I would love if you could send me, and I'll put it in the show notes of the potty. So you talked about Eliza Strauss and
Strauss,
Strauss. If you could have sent through her details, and then the one about, like, say his name book, and there's just a couple 100%. Of things you referred to. So send it all through to me. I'll put it in the show notes because they're all things that I want to have a look at, and I know some other people might as well.
Elle Wright is phenomenal. Like, if you read her books, it's just, I lapped it up in a day. Like, it was what I needed, and just those feelings and emotions that you feel. It's just nice to know that someone else has been through it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I got given so many books when it all first happened, and so I have them all there, and I'm like, I don't even know which ones to read and where to go, and I'm normally a podcast girl.
I've got heaps as well. Glimmer podcast is amazing if you've ever listened to that.
Okay.
On top of it's done by a doctor, obstetrician who lost her child as well, and she interviews lots of different people that have been through the grief and loss as well. That's what I started listening to way back when, before obviously yours had been. And that was really beneficial. But and some books resonate and some don't. Like, there's some books that I found I didn't resonate with, and then but I know that will resonate for others. And I found a little help from Jack. I don't know if you've seen that. Emily, she's amazing, and the resources she has are phenomenal. Like,
I know. I got given this in the hospital, I think. So.
We've just donated them to the hospital too, down here, and because there's things in there that I didn't know about. So we've got a weighted crocheted doll that's Wren's weight and length.
Yes.
That we got. It's in that book. She was phenomenal because I told her about Wren's birthday, and she usually takes a month or two to make it. Yes.
That's where I'm getting mine made.
So good. And it comes and it's swaddled in a little wrap, and it's got a little beanie on it, and she said what colour. I've got a pink flower on her beanie, and just to hold that weight. Yeah. And she made sure that she got it to us before Wren's first birthday. She finished it and express posted it, so we had it before her birthday, and that was, just little things like that make such a difference.
Was that in here, was it? I interviewed somebody like 2 weeks ago, and they had, I think it was Colette, I'm not sure who it was, and they suggested, I'm going to have to put the Instagram in the show notes because I forget now, but and I've been messaging her and I said, can I get it before Christmas? Like, I just really want it for Christmas Day, so it's on its way. A weighted bear.
And just having that weight, it was so nice. And I dressed it in one of Edie's little onesies that Wren would have had. And it's still out on display. And it was actually really healing for Edie. Like, she sat there cuddling it, and she was sitting on the couch, and she's just patting the bum and just cuddled into it. And it's amazing what those sort of things can do. Like, you need something to physically hold on to.
Yes. And that weight, like, because I remember my friend giving me the advice, like, when you hold her, just remember that feeling. And so I do, but the actual feeling of it, I'm like, oh, I'd love to feel that again.
It was, as soon as I did it, I was in the rocking chair for ages, just with on me, and I'm like, this is just,
oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Yeah, you love it. And if you ever get a print, the Sunny Day, have you seen One Sunny?
No.
Her name's Nicole, and she does angel portraits. So you send a photo in, and it's water paints and pencils, and then she uses Venetian lace and embosses it, and it's stunning, absolutely stunning. Like, I'll send you that as well. I think
I might have seen them, but they're super expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone sent it to me, and I was like, "Oh, it's really expensive."
That's if anyone ever wants to get you a gift to all go in together for, we got ours. Matt's cousin got it for us for Wren, and I just adore it. And she customised it for us because I brought all the placentas home for got Edie's here, Wren's and now Noah's, and Edie's and Wren's are under Banksia's, so she's put Banksia's in the flower crown for us.
That is so
just
beautiful.
Little things like that,
I have seen that website. Yes, super expensive, but so beautiful and
so beautiful.
Maybe one day. Yeah,
maybe one day.
But so okay. So send me the links of all the things that you recommend, all the things that you've suggested today, the books, and we'll put it in the show notes. Your potty is gonna be out, I think, early Jan, because I've just been going crazy interviewing everybody. 14th of Jan, you'll be out.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I've been loving it. But my producer, my cousin, is like, okay, one a week now, please. Like, just
calm it down.
I'm like, how do I say no to people? I just don't want to say no to anyone. It's hard, but you've got to
give yourself time to, because you're going on that journey and putting your emotions into it as well, and got to protect yourself too and your heart, and give yourself space to breathe.
I know, I do, I will. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it was lovely to meet you. Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Like I always say, I imagine Wren and Millie dancing in heaven right now. Just like going, yay, our mums are friends.
In pink dresses, of course.
In a big flower field.
Oh, gorgeous girls.
I love it. Aww. I love it. All right, Maddy.
Beautiful. It was lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much. And we'll chat again soon.
Yes, please. That was lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
See ya.
Bye, lovely. Bye.
Bye.